Welcome everybody to Republic Light Chat Box. I'm your host Liz DeToro, and here today with Mike James. He is with me for Davidson County. He is actually retired major from North Carolina Highway Patrol, 11 years police chief in Spencer, and he has a BS in criminal justice. And I'm understanding, Mike, that you're running for sheriff. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. That is correct.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit on how that all started? Give us the background of where that's coming from.
Well, a lot of prayer. For 4 months during the exploratory stages, I talked to my good Lord above, and he placed in my heart that he wanted me to seek the office of sheriff. So having his blessing, I decided to do it. And I'm honored to be running as a Republican candidate in Davidson County for sheriff.
Okay, and so I'm talk to us about where you're from. I'm in the understanding you're from another county.
Yes, I grew up in Stokes County, a little place called King, rural community, and since I left there to go to Highway Patrol Basic School in 1981, it's grown a lot, but still a great community and similar in a lot of ways to Davidson County. It's a very conservative area. It's a Republican county, just like Davidson County is.
Okay, so what brought you to Davidson County?
Well, I was hired as the police chief in Spencer, and my wife very frankly said, there's only one way you're going to get me out of the mountains of western North Carolina. She said, you're going to have to put me on the lake. So we started looking for property in Rowan County and just couldn't find anything. And amazingly enough, we looked at a property in Davidson County, and at that time couldn't get our house sold. So as time went on, that house was still on the market, and it just happened to be in Davidson County. Okay. And you know, God works in mysterious ways, and he placed me here in this house exactly halfway in between my parents and my wife's parents who live outside of Charlotte.
Who are the agencies that are going to be surrounded with you?
Well, I want to work with all agencies. I actually went to high school with the U.S. Attorney in Greensboro, Sandra Harrison. So I think there are a lot of drug cases that you need the help of the federal government. So my vision is to work with mutual aid agencies, improve the relationship with Lexington PD, Thomasville PD, as well as ATF, DEA, Homeland Security. Because if you're going to be successful in drug enforcement, you've got to have a lot of partners to reach your goals.
Okay. Now, as you know, Republic Light represents Latinos in government honorary team. How do you see, I don't know how long you've been at Davidson County, but how do you see that population when it comes down to incorporating them, maybe if you do become sheriff, incorporating like, let's say, Latinos within the department? Is that something that you can speak on?
Well, the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, that's one thing that they stress that is important. The agency in Davidson County, the Sheriff's Office, should be made up of all people, all ethnicities, so that we have people employed that can interact with all people in our community. And one other thing that I want to do is establish a Sheriff's Advisory Board. And I would want African Americans, Caucasians, members of the Latino community to sit on that advisory board, and we would meet probably monthly. You know, my view is the sheriff is not the boss, the people are the boss. And I believe in having an open door where people can come in and sit down with the sheriff and tell about problems they're having and ideas they may have.
Now, I do understand within the GOP meeting, you mentioned that you wanted to do some more programs with the elderly within if you get elected. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, ma'am. You know, there are a lot of elderly people in our community that they don't have family close by. They're pretty much isolated, and this was brought to light in talking to a friend when we had the snowstorms. Who is checking on these elderly people to make sure they've got food, to make sure they've got heat? And my view is that it would be ideal for a deputy sheriff to go by and check on these people. We had a program in Rowan County called Are You OK? And in some cases, we would actually have keys to homes. Occasionally people would fall, they couldn't get up and may not have a phone to call for help. So if no one had heard from them in a few days, it was great to have that key where you didn't have to break the door And I remember helping one elderly lady up out of her living room floor. And had we not had that, we would have had to have broken the door down. So I think that's important to reach out to the elders in our community.
Okay. And I know for a fact, at least in the time that I've been here working with the community college, I'm a retired instructor, and a lot of the times agencies need to work together and not to duplicate the services that they do, but to connect and become assets for the services. Like, for example, the sheriff department can work together with social service, can work together with family, church, for example, ministry. So how do you feel about the community coming together? How would you infiltrate the community, for example, if you wanted to educate the community on things going on?
Well, I think if you don't have the support of the community, we might as well close up our bags and go home and give up. You've got to have the community support. I say many times that the badge that law enforcement officers wear, that authority comes from the people. And if you don't have the support of the people, and when the chips are down and we have to use deadly force or use force to effect an arrest, you better know those community leaders long before that happens. So I think it's paramount that we have a great relationship with our churches. Recent studies show with recidivism for drug use, if Jesus Christ is not involved in that recovery process, then most time it fails. You know, the federal government originally thought we could do all these recovery programs for addicts. But just recently, I was listening to a podcast with Mike Sweck, and that's one thing he said: if Jesus Christ is involved, then we're much more successful helping addicts. And if, you know, we got to do the enforcement, but we got to help the people that have the problems.
Okay. So basically, you've answered pretty much all the questions that I had, but I did have a comment. And one of the things is, I do believe what you're saying. It's very important for the sheriff department to work together in alliance with the churches, simply because my parents were Methodist missionaries. Before they left to do the missionary work, they had a parish in Bronx, New York, back in 1975. And I'm going back a little bit. I'm not going to tell you my age, but and during that time, one of the things that was imperative were the alliances that my parents built with the police department, with the Salvation Army, with social services. And I remember we did VBS, but we did also soup kitchens and vocational camps. We did a lot of work, and I do believe that, you know, hand in hand, whether it be whatever faith denomination you belong to, I agree, it is a vital part of the community to be able to engage with these programs that the government does have through the sheriff's department, through the social services, because, you know, it takes a collective to make a community, but it also takes a collective effort to be able to bring in goodness, you know, and hope, especially after this 2 years that we've had. I don't know if you agree, James, but these 2 years that we've had with COVID and a lot of people committing suicide and depression because they've been isolated or whatever the fact of the matter is.
Well, I think you point out something that is very true, and I saw it as a police chief at the, we thought we were through COVID, and then we started having variants, and assaultive behavior increased 1,000%.
Wow.
And people were to the point that they had been shut up together so long and they couldn't get out and interact with others socially.
Wow.
I think that's what drove that up, but that was amazing. So, you know, going up 1,000%, that points out the need for exactly what you're saying. So I think we've got to get back to, and I'm glad to see our school board finally make mask optional.
I agree. Well, thank you so much, Mike James, for being on board to Republic Light Chat Box. Hopefully this won't be the last time you will be here on an interview. And I wish you the best for the elections and the primary that's coming up. If you want more information, please let people know how they can get more information about you.
Yes, please go to MikeJamesForSheriff.com. And I'll tell you, I'm very pro Second Amendment. Soon we will have a raffle in place for AR-15 with the American flag coming down, and there's an inscription on it that says the Second Amendment is not a suggestion. And my view for that, it's a right, and we need to uphold the right to bear arms. And
so thank you so much, James, for being on board. And we hope to see you again on Republic Light very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.